I've got December here, and I just realised that I probably should have put them all in piles. Oh my god. Hello guys, and welcome to my 2025 wrap up. So this video is going to be very long because I am going to be showing you every single book that I read each month in 2025. And how this is basically going to work is I'm just going to say the star rating. I did read 164 books this year, which my goal was 200, but by the end of the year I changed it to 150 just because I didn't realise that I'd go through 3 major book slumps. I think it's still crazy that I read 164/5 books. I'm not quite sure. It's the most books I've read in a year thus far. So my goal this year is going to be 175. Make it a little bit challenging. Should we just get started with January? Okay. So these are all the books. I have my January stack right here. These are the stats for January. Yeah, so we're just gonna go straight into it. So the first book that I read of the whole entire year was Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. I gave this book a 2.75 stars. Then we read Ali Hazelwood, Check and Mate. This one I gave a 4.25 stars. Then we read When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I gave this one a 4 stars. And then I also read the second one to that series, which is Practice Makes Perfect. And I gave this one 4 stars as well. Then I read the Knock 'Em Out series. So the first book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I gave this one a 4.25 stars. Then we have Things We Hide from the Light, which is the second one. I gave a 3.25 star. And then the final one in that series is Things We Left Behind, and I gave that one a 4.25 stars. Then we started reading the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. The first one is The Deal, and I gave this one a 3.25 stars. Then we read The Mistake, which I gave a 3.5 stars. Then The Score, which I gave a 3.75 stars. And then the final book that I read physically in January was By a Thread by Lucy Score. This one I gave a 2.75 stars. Then we read One Can Do Unlimited book, which is Sticks and Stones by S. Masseri, and I gave that one a 2 stars. So these are my February stats. So the first book that I read in February was Throttled, which is the first book in the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. I gave this one a 3.75 star. Then we read the second book, which is Collided, and I gave this one a 4 star. Then we read Wrecked, and I gave this one a 3.5 star. Then we read Redeemed, and I gave this one a 4.25 star. Then I decided to read Manacled by Sen-Lin Yu, and I gave this one a 4 stars. Then we also read Nemesis by Soraya, and I gave that one a 3 stars. We also read Loving Romeo, which I gave a 2.5 stars. Then we read The Goal, which is a part of that Off-Campus series. I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we read The Legacy, which is the final Off-Campus series book, and I gave it a 1.5 star. Then we read Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Then we read The Fake Out, which is the second book in the Vancouver Storm series, and I gave that one a 4.75 stars. And then the final book that I read was That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. This is the Queen's Cove series, and I gave this book a 4 stars. Alrighty, so these are my March statistics. The first book I read in March was continuing the Queen's Cove series by Stephanie Archer. It's The Wrong Mr. Right. I gave this book a 3 stars. Then we read In Your Dreams, Holding Roach, again a part of that series. I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we have Finn Rhodes Forever. This is the 4th and final book in that series, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read The Heartbreak Rule by Stephanie Archer, and I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we started on the Chestnut Springs journey. So the first book is Flawless by Elsie Silver, and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. Then we read Heartless, and I gave this one a 4.25 stars. Then we read Powerless, and I gave this one a 4.5 stars. And then we read Reckless, which I gave a 4.5 stars. Then we read Offside by Avery Keelan. I gave this one also a 4 stars. And then finally we read Hopeless which is the final book in the Chestnut Spring series, and I gave this one 4 stars. Overall, that series was a 5-star series. Then we read Saving Six, which is part of the Boys of Tommen series. This is the 3rd book, and I gave it a 3.75 stars. Then we read Ashes, which is the 2nd book to Nemesis by Soraya, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read Imposter by Alexia Nanzaronis, I think that's how you say it, and I gave it 2 stars. Then we read The Barefoot Investor by Scott Pape, and I don't rate non-fiction, so. Then we read The Enforcer by Avery Keelan, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read Consider Me by Becca Mack, which this was my 2nd time reading this because I read it originally last year, in 2023 I read it. I gave this one a 4 stars. Then we read Play With Me, which is the 2nd book in this series, and I gave it a 3.75 stars. Then we read Unravel Me, and I gave this one a 4.75 stars. Then I read the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey, and I gave all of the books a 4 stars, but the overall series itself is a 5-star series. And that was all the books that I read in March. And at this point, we still have not found a 5-star. Okay, here are my April stats. First up, we have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I reread this book because this was the first book that got me introduced to reading. I reread it and I gave it a 2 stars. Then we reread Fourth Wing, which I love this book so much, so it is quite obviously a 5-star. It is a 10-star if I could give it a 10-star. So that is technically the first 5-star of the year, however, it's not a new book, so. Then we read Iron Flame, which is the 2nd book in the Imperium series, and I gave this one a 5-star. This was the first 5-star of the year, technically. Then we read Legendary by Stephanie Garber, which I gave a 3.5 stars. Then we read Famous Last Words by C.W. Farnsworth. This one I gave a 3 stars. And then we also read Against All Odds, which is the 2nd book in that series, and I gave that one a 4 stars. Then I read Heartstrong by Elodie Pullen. I kind of listened to that when I was driving. That was my first audiobook of the year, and I don't rate them, but I highly recommend reading it. Then we read the Vancouver Agitators series by Megan Quinn. First one is Kiss and Don't Tell, which I gave 3 stars. The second one is Those Three Little Words, which I gave 2 stars. Then Right Man, Right Time, and I gave it 3 stars. He's Not My Type, which I gave 4 stars. And then the final book that I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I gave this book a 4 stars. This one is going to be super easy. So this is my May stats here. Yeah, this was the month that I definitely slumped a lot. But the first book that I read, which is The Serpent and the Wings of the Night by Carissa Broadbent, was indeed a 5-star read. Then we read/listened to Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. And that was all I read. These are my June statistics. The first book I read was 'Tis the Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Then I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Then I read The Capcut, which is the 3rd The Influencer series by Amy Leah, and I gave this one a 4.5 stars. Then we read A Photo Finish, which is a part of the Gold Rush Ranch series by Elsie Silver, and I gave this one a 4.25 stars. Then we read The Front Runner, which again is a part of that series, and I gave it a 4 stars. And then the final book that I read as a part of that series was False Start, which is 3.5 stars. Then we read Insurgent by Veronica Roth. This is the second book in the Divergent series, and I gave it a 3.5 stars. And then we read The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent, which is the 2nd book in the Crowns of Niagara series, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Then we read Weak Side by S.J. Silvers. I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we read Sin Bin by Anastasia White, and I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we started the Hawkeye Hockey series by Kenna King, and the first book, which is Cocky Score, I gave 4 stars. The second book, which is Filthy Score, I gave 3.5. The third book, which is Brutal Score, I gave 3.75. Then the fourth book, Rough Score, I gave 3.25 stars. The fifth book, Dirty Score, I gave 4 stars. And then the last book that I read this month was Burnout by Rebecca Genshak, and I gave it a 3 stars. Are you sick of listening to me yet? Here are my July stats. The first book that I read in July was The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This is the Friend Zone series, and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. Then we read the second book in this series, which is the Happy Ever After playlist, and I gave this one a 4 stars. Then we read Life's Too Short, which I gave a 3.75 stars, and that was that series complete. Then we started the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez, and the first book is Part of Your World, and we gave it a 3.5 stars. Then we read Yours Truly, which is the second book in this series, and I gave it a 4 stars. Then we read Say You Swear by Megan Brandy, and I gave it a 4 stars. We then read The Wedding Crasher by Abigail Mann, and I gave this one a 3 stars. Then we read Rival Darling by Alexandra Moody, and I gave this one a 4 stars. We then read Failure to Match by Kyra Parsi. This is actually the second book in the series, and I didn't realize that, so I read that first, but I gave it a 4 stars. And then we read the first book, which is A Deal with the Bossy Devil, and I gave that one a 4 stars. Then we read Pure Sloth by Anna Huang. This is the 4th book in the Kings of Sing series, and I gave it a 3.5 stars. Then we read the If Love series by Anna Huang as well, and the first one is If We Ever Meet Again, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we read If the Sun Never Sets, 3.25 stars. Then we read If We Were Perfect, which was 3 stars. And then If Love Had a Price, which was 4 stars. Then we read Face Off by Chelsea Curto, and I gave it a 4.25 stars. Then we started the Karina Kent universe, and we started with Cruel King, which I gave 3 stars. And then the final book that I read was Caught Up by Liz Tomford, which is a part of the Windy City series, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Here are my reading stats for August. The first book that we read was the last book in the Part of Your World series, which is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and I gave this one a 4 stars. Then we read Play Along by Liz Tomford, which is the 4th book in the Windy City series, and I gave this one a 4.75 stars. Then we read Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Mass. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. Then we read Quicksilver, which is the 3rd 5-star this year. I love this book, highly recommend. It's by Callie Hart, and it's so good. Then we read the next book in the Royal Elite series by Rena Kent, and it's called Deviant King, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read Promise Me by Carly Jean, which I gave a 3.75 stars. We read Still Princess by Rena Kent, which is a part of that Rena Kent world, and I gave that one a 3 stars. Then I read Trust Me, which is the second book to Promise Me by Carly Jean, and I gave it a 3.25 stars. Then we read Twisted Kingdom, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we read Unexpectedly Mine by Erin Hawkins, which I gave a 3.5 star. Then I read Pup Block by S.J. Silvers, and I gave that one a 3.25 stars. This was the month that I did my 24-hour reading challenge as well, so these were all the books that I read during that phase as well. So the first book that we read was Collide by Bal Cabra. This one I gave a 3.5 stars. Then we read Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we read Wild Love by Elsie Silver, which I gave a 4.25 stars. Then we read Ice Bet by S.J. Silvers, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we read The 7-Year Slip, which I gave a 5 stars. I love this book, and it is the 4th 5-star book, I think. 4th or 5th. I've lost track. Then we read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillick, which I gave a 4 stars. We then read Finale, which is a part of the Caraval series, and I gave it a 2.5 stars. Then we read Culty by Mariana Zapata, which I gave it a 3.5 stars. Then we read Fall With Me by Becca Mack, which I gave a 4.5 stars. Then we read Not In Love by Ellie Hazelwood, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we read Paper Princess by Erin Watt, and I gave it a 3.25 stars. And then finally we read Funny Story by Emily Henry, and I gave this book a 5 stars. These are my September stats. Alright, the first book that I read was Center Ice by Julia Connors, which I gave a 2.75 stars. Then I read A Love Letter to Whiskey, which is the 5th anniversary edition by Candy Steiner, which I gave a 3.5 stars. Then we read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Marion Zapata, gave it a 4 stars. We read Powerful, which is the novella in the Powerless trilogy, and I gave it a 3.5 stars. We read Betting on You by Lynn Painter, which I gave a 3.75 stars. Then we read The Broken Prince, which is part of that Paper Princess series by Erin Watt, 3.5 stars. Then we read Reckless, a part of the Powerless trilogy by Lauren Roberts, and we gave it a 3.75 stars. Then we read Love Story by Lindsay Kelk, which I gave a 3.5 stars. Then we read The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni and we gave it a 3.75 stars. Then we read The Rule Book, which is the second book in the Cheat Sheet series by Sarah Adams, and I gave it 3 stars. Then we read The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren, which I gave it 3.5 stars. Then we read Lucky School, which is the 6th book in the Hawkeye's Hockey series by Kenna King, which we gave a 3.5 stars. And then we read The Au Pair Affair, which is the second book in the Big Shot series by Tessa Bailey, and I gave it a 2.75 stars. That was my October. No, that was my September. This is my October. These are my October stats. So the first book that we read in, what month was it? October, was 6 Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent, which is the novella in between Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Starcursed King, which I gave a 4 stars. Then we read Grumpy Romance by Nia Arthurs, which I gave a 3 stars. We read Addicted to You by Krista Ritchie, which I gave a 3 stars. Ricochet, which again is a part of that series, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then I read Love Interest by Claire Gilmore, which I gave it a 4.25 stars. Then we read The Striker by Anna Huang, and I gave it a 4 stars. Alright, these are my November stats. So the first book that I read was Wild Eyes, which is the second book in the Rose Hill series by Elsie Silver, and I gave it a 3.25 stars. Then I read All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Then we read Nothing Like the Movies, which is the second book to Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read Love Unwritten, which is the second book to the Lakefront Billionaire series by Lauren Asher, and I gave it a 3.25 stars. Then we read Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayhew. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but I gave it 3.5 stars. Then we read The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther, which I gave a 1.5 stars. Then we read Rules of Our Own by Jessa Wilder, which I gave 4 stars. We then read Rule Number 5, which is a part of the same series, but the first book, because I read the third book first, and I gave that a 3 stars. Then I read A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, which I gave a 4.25 stars. Then we read The Ring Man by Stephanie Archer, which is a part of that Vancouver Storm series, and I gave it a 2.5 stars. And then we read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I gave a 1 star, and I DNF'd it. It's okay guys, now we're up to December, which is the last month of the year. Alright, the first book that we read was Love Light Farms by B.K. Burrison, 3 stars. Then we continued that series, which is with the next one, which is In the Weeds, which is again 3 stars. Then we read Mixed Singles, part of that series, 3 stars. Then we read Butcher and Blackford, which is by Bryn Weaver, and I gave it a 4 stars. Then we read Pucking Around by Emily Rath, which I gave a 3.5 stars. Then we read Business Casual, which is a part of that series by B.K. Burrison, which I gave a 3 stars. Then we reread King of Wrath by Anna Huang, which I gave a 4 stars yet again. Then we DNF'd The Brothers Hawthorne, which I gave a 1 star. I got over 50%, so. Then we read As Good as Dead, which is the third book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I gave that one a 3.5 stars. Then we read Parking Wild by Emily Rath, which is the second book in the Jacksonville Race series, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read Redeeming 6, which I gave a 3.5 stars. This is the part of the Boys of Tommen series. It's the 4th book. Then we read Offside Play, which is by Lissa Lemire, and I gave it a 3 stars. Then we read The Prisoner's Throne, which I gave a 2 stars. Then we read The Ballad of Sunbirds and Snakes, which I gave a 2.5 stars. Then we read We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I gave it a 2 stars. And then the final book that I read this year was What Happens After Midnight by K.L. Walther, and I gave it a 3 stars. Hello guys, it is a couple days later and I have finally decided on a TBR for January. Alrighty, so this month is kind of a very random TBR. I usually tend to stick to like romance themes or fantasy or like specific themes, but this month I really want to try and finish a lot of books on my physical TBR and try to finish series that I only have 1 book left. So that's kind of my goal for this month. So to begin, I have started reading A Jingle Bell Mingle by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I did not realize this was the 3rd of the book. I'm like 100 pages in and I wanted to read this at Christmas, but I was so busy and now I just want to read it to get it over with and then possibly read the first 2 ones around Christmas time. Also, this is a sneak peek you are getting a sneak peek into my new bookshelves. Then I'm also currently listening to The Italian Marriage by Jenna Lobianco. Look how pretty this cover is. Then going along with the theme of finishing series that I only have one book left, I want to read Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillick. I did start this. I did not get far in. I got one chapter in. But I really want to read this because apparently this book is better than the first one. So I'm really trying to read more fantasy this year because I've got a lot of fantasy on my physical TBR. Then I want to read Allegiant by Veronica Roth. I read the first two last year and I really just want to get through this. Then another book which is a part of the series is Daydream. I just got this back from my friend who borrowed it and I'm so excited to read it. I've heard really good things about it. Then we have Twisted Palace by Erin Watt. This is a part of the Paper Princess series. I think it's called The Royals. The Royal series. It's book 3 out of 5. Except I did buy this book, so I want to read it and see if I want to continue the series. Ideally I do, but I really want to finish that this month before I continue the other series. Another series that only has one book left is Ruthless Vows. I did in fact start this. I got 60 pages in, but I really want to finish this because I just want to know what happens. And yeah, now I've got 2 books which are a part of the Prison Healer series. These 2 books, The Good Cage and The Blood Trainer by Lynette Noni. These are the 2 books that I want to read because I read The Prison Healer and I really enjoyed it. So I want to continue the series. Then we have Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. This is the last installment of the Magnolia Park side. And I just want to get through this book. It is a thick book. And then finally we have Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, which you might be like, Chloe, you've already read these. Yes. Yes, I have. But Onyx Storm comes out on the 21st and I am so excited to read that one. And before Iron Flame came out, I reread Fourth Wing. And I want to do the same. I want to reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be my TBR. This year I want to really try and finish all the series that I've started so that I'm not in the middle of so many. Like I used to be so good. I used to be like, yes, reading the whole series and then that's it. But currently I am in the middle of so many series. I literally did a Notion page about it and I am very concerned for myself. But that is all for this video. Thanks for listening to me yap. That is all. I will see you in my next video. And yeah, do all those YouTube things you know how to do. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram and all those fun things. And I will see you in my next video or somewhere else on the internet. Bye.